Coming up on ncIMPACT, staffing shortages remain a problem for many schools across our state. Let's see how some school districts are getting creative in recruiting and retaining their teachers.
ncIMPACT is a PBS North Carolina production in association with the University of North Carolina School of Government. Funding for ncIMPACT is made possible by
changing the course of people's lives. That's the impact UNC Health and the UNC School of Medicine work to deliver every day. Our 40,000 team members across the state of North Carolina are committed to caring for you, our patients and communities, as well as educating the next generation of healthcare professionals. Individually, we can do a little, but collectively, we can do a lot to create impact.
Welcome to ncIMPACT. I'm Anita Brown Graham. Some schools across our state are struggling to recruit and retain teachers. At the beginning of this school year, there were thousands of vacancies across the 115 school districts in North Carolina. ncIMPACT's David Hurst joins us with a look at how the shortage is impacting students and the remaining staff.
Whether it be the pay, the pressure, or the pandemic, many teachers have left the classroom or are considering it. It's leaving some school districts scrambling to fill vacancies. I spoke with a local principal about the ways he and his school have had to get creative. Walking the halls of Eno Valley Elementary, Principal Jason Jowers often thinks about what would have happened had he taken his parents' advice not to go into education.
They wanted me to go into tech or something along those lines. Yeah. Okay.
But in high school, he realized education was his passion, and he earned a scholarship with the North Carolina Teaching Fellows.
I knew this was my calling, and so at that point, I just started setting goals moving forward as it pertained to education.
Jowers taught high school for several years before becoming an administrator. He says in his 13 years of education, recruiting and retaining teachers has always been a challenge. But ever since the pandemic, it's become even more difficult.
COVID allowed people an opportunity to reflect on their life, their quality of living, spending more time with family. If you are going to go in education and be good at it, it's a sacrifice.
Nationwide, between February of 2020 and May of 2022, about 300,000 public school educators and staff left the profession. Low pay, burnout from the pandemic, and opportunities within other industries are just a few reasons cited by educators leaving the profession.
I think we're finally starting to have real conversations about the challenges facing education, particularly as it pertains to the financial incentives that we're offering teachers. I know that's a tough conversation to have, but in this climate, you have to have it.
Talk to me, Jacob.
Jowers says while principals have limited control over salaries, they can help create a school culture where teachers feel valued and appreciated. He's also implemented several creative recruiting methods, including focusing on international recruiting and reaching out to some of the high schoolers he taught who are now graduating or recently graduated.
A lot of those kids I remember how intelligent they were, what type of kid they were. So when I find the best and the brightest that are still young and trying to figure out life, why not give us an opportunity to see how you like it?
Jowers says some students just need a little push to discover their passion. Because for him, his push was earning the fellow scholarship. And if it weren't for that, he probably wouldn't be working in education.
I think it's important that we have to recreate some of those initiatives to give people, at least make education an option. I think for a lot of people right now, it's not even an option.
Walking these halls, he's grateful for the career decision he made. And despite the challenges, he's optimistic it's a decision others will continue to make as well.
You all right?
For the 2022-2023 school year, the starting pay for a first-year teacher with a bachelor's degree is $37,000. Some school districts use local funds to supplement that state-based pay.
Wow, thank you, David. Joining me now is Marianne Wolfe. Marianne serves as the president and executive director of the Public School Forum of North Carolina. Thank you so much for being with us, Marianne. In your conversations across North Carolina with school districts, what are you hearing as it relates to teacher and staff shortages?
We are hearing that there is a significant problem and maybe even more challenging than expected. At the beginning of the school year, the North Carolina Association of School Administrators surveyed superintendents and found that there were 3,600 vacancies in teaching roles, and an additional 3,600 roles were filled with teachers that were not fully licensed. And this is in addition to many other staffing challenges with counselors, with social workers, and bus drivers. So we're hearing across the board how significant this is.
This is a complicated problem, and of course, there are myriad reasons for it. But help us to understand the crux of how do we get here? Is it solely a matter of pay, or are there other factors at play that are causing teachers to leave the profession?
So this has been a long time coming, and perhaps the pandemic exacerbated it or accelerated it, but we've known for well over a decade that we would have this kind of a shortage. There are many different factors, whether teacher pay, working conditions, and just how the profession is treated. But we can't ignore the fact that North Carolina is ranked 38th in the country in terms of teacher pay, and that includes our local supplements. And we also know that in terms of beginning pay, which in North Carolina is $37,000 from the state, that is the lowest in the Southeast. And that all comes from where our funding effort is. We are the bottom in terms of funding effort and 48th in terms of our per pupil expenditure when you adjust for regional cost differences. So the fact that we're not investing both affects salaries, which means can a teacher afford to pay childcare? Can they afford to live in the communities they serve? But also, do they see that we're valuing that profession and the education and the credentials that they have? So it all works together with that working conditions that were just referenced in the clip, because it's so important. They all go together, but pay is certainly something where people know they'll make a sacrifice if they go into this field.
We'll come back and we'll talk a little bit about how the pipeline itself is being challenged. But at this point, I wonder if you would just help us understand, how are the children in the classrooms across our state being impacted by these staffing shortages?
We know that teachers are the #1 school-related factor that impacts student outcomes. So every day a student doesn't have a high qualified teacher in their classroom affects their learning and also their outcomes. And if that happens year after year, that has even a more compounded effect. We know this leads to and contributes to what they're able to do in their lifetime, but it also contributes to our state and our economy and how prepared our kids are. So our kids are affected every day when they don't have a teacher that's qualified and able to invest in them in those classrooms. And so teachers, families, communities will all feel the effects of the shortage that we have right now.
Marianne, thank you so much for helping to highlight the challenge. Whatever the crisis, North Carolina communities find solutions. From 2006 to 2018, about 1 in 5 teachers in Edgecombe County public schools left the district each year. Our Sloan Heffernan explains how the alarming turnover rate resulted in a Grow Your Own Teacher program.
School officials say there are a lot of reasons for high teacher turnover rates in rural, high-poverty counties, including salary and the aging teacher population. The Scholar Teachers program was designed to solve the problem through recruiting from within.
That's 5 times 5.
Jacqueline Dickens is a first-year teacher at Martin Millennium Academy in Edgecombe County, but she says it already feels like home. She grew up attending school in this district.
There's a big impact that I believe you can make when you are from the place that you serve.
Dickens is one of the first graduates of the Scholar Teachers program in Edgecombe County, a Grow Your Own Teachers program designed to combat the county's 20% teacher turnover rate.
Grow Your Own means a lot of different things in different contexts. Here in our county, what it means is tapping into our high school students who might have an interest in becoming teachers and exposing them to the profession before they go off to a 4-year school.
Your goals for your internship today?
The Scholar Teachers program is based at Edgecombe Early College High School on the Edgecombe Community College campus. High school students like Josh Webb learn about lesson planning and other skills for becoming an effective teacher. The students also spend 200 hours in the classroom shadowing master teachers as part of an internship.
And then when I joined the Scholar Teacher class, everything clicked. Like, things started falling into place. I started realizing I loved kids and I loved the whole art of teaching.
Webb says he was also motivated to become a teacher to help create a more diverse classroom.
I didn't have my first black male teacher until 7th grade. And I want to be that person for students. I want students to come into my classroom and go, man, that guy looks like me. Because that might push them to teaching, but it might also push them to pursue their other goals. You know, he pursued his, why can't I pursue mine?
As part of the program, students receive a $30,000 scholarship to attend the college of their choice. But there is one condition.
Students go to college with a $30,000 scholarship and a promissory agreement that they will come back and that they will teach specifically in Edgecombe County.
Scholars like Dickens commit to teaching for 3 years in the county after college. School officials say donations fund the college scholarships.
One of the amazing things about this program is that the scholarships are funded by folks who care about the community. And so we have had $5 donations to the program. We've had $10,000 donations to the program.
Organizers say the ability to recruit from within creates a workforce that truly understands the challenges of teaching in a rural, high-poverty county like Edgecombe County.
And it's like we're working together to make a positive impact for all of these kids.
Dickens says becoming a scholar teacher was one of the best decisions she's ever made, a true homegrown success story. The Scholar Teachers Program has only been around for 5 years, so it's still too early to measure the success. The number of teachers they are able to retain from the program will be one of the metrics. Organizers hope it will become a model for other school districts across the state and beyond.
Thank you so much, Sloan. Working together, music to our ears. Joining me now is Bennett Jones. Bennett is the director of the North Carolina Teaching Fellows Program. Bennett, we just saw an inspiring homegrown solution in Edgecombe County. Give us some idea of what other solutions are out there across our state where communities are tackling this shortage issue.
Well, thank you, Anita. Specifically, the North Carolina Teaching Fellows Program is open to all North Carolina students for tuition assistance, much like the Grow Your Own program set up in Edgecombe County. The North Carolina Teaching Fellows Program is housed at 8 universities and colleges across North Carolina, 6 in the UNC system office, and 2 private colleges and universities. And specifically is designed to help prepare students and to become teachers in the fields of STEM and special education. And so the program was reestablished in 2017, and so we are continuing to expand and recruit students to take advantage of the program. What the program offers is up to $4,125 per semester for up to 8 semesters in tuition assistance and books and fees for our students to study to become a teacher. And then they will repay, much like the Grow Your Own program, by going to work in one of the public schools across North Carolina for up to 4 to up to 8 years. There are a couple of other aspects of the program that are important. One is that new teacher support is provided for these teachers, that when they finish and graduate from those education preparation programs, they are partnered with a mentor and a coach to help them as they go into work in the schools across to provide that new teacher support. And that's an effort to retain them into the field and to keep them in the field and help support them, because it's very important, as Marianne mentioned earlier, is that to have a highly qualified teacher, but also a well-trained and highly prepared teacher to go into not just teach our kids in 1 year, but to stay over the course of a career.
So just quickly, Bennett, how do most students find out about the Teaching Fellows Program?
We advertise through a variety of ways. We really tried to up our social media presence this year, knowing that students get a lot of their information from social media. We have our website, NorthCarolinaTeachingFellows.com, where students can get information, parents can get information as well. A key aspect of Teaching Fellows in this iteration is that it's also open to students who are at community colleges or students who may be at other universities who are interested in transferring into an education preparation program to become a teacher, and even for teachers who are currently seeking residency licensure and residency programs, we are open and available to them as well. So we're trying to reach out to our community college systems, reaching out to our local education agencies as well to promote the scholarship and the opportunities that are available through the North Carolina Teaching Fellows Program.
Wonderful. I'm going to come back and talk to you a little bit more about the pipeline in a second. In many communities across the state, living on a teacher's salary may be difficult as housing and other costs continue to rise. But a growing number of communities are trying to help recruit and retain teachers by offering affordable housing. ncIMPACT's Evan Howell visited Asheville, where the average rent is around $1,900 per month.
So we're going to do our warm-up today.
Kanan Frisbee grew up in a family of teachers.
The income by itself is not what brought me to education. Where should Tehran be waiting?
He began as an intern in the Buncombe County School District, and when he finished, he was able to get a job. His only question was where to find an apartment.
People definitely want to move to Asheville. People are moving to Asheville all the time. But for teachers moving to Asheville, they've got to find a place to live.
Angela Trantham became principal at Johnson Elementary School in July of 2022. She says her first order of business was to hire 60% of the school staff who had either retired or moved on.
Asheville has a very high cost of living, and we know that teacher salaries do not match that. So having somewhere that teachers can live that's affordable is essential in order for us to maintain that continuity.
One solution was to offer affordable housing with the Williams Baldwin Teacher Campus, which opened in 2017. The wait list is long, and once an apartment is vacated, it's filled almost immediately.
That waiting list, it shows us, these apartments, $950 per month, average being around $1,400 for a two-bedroom, and that's a very conservative type estimate. This is, again, it is affordable housing for a priority group of professionals for our community.
Did you watch Carolina last night?
No.
Pat Bryan is a former member of the Buncombe County Board of Education. He says the program is a partnership between the Buncombe County School District and the State Employees Credit Union, which provided the loan through Eblin Charities.
This was not something that we decided in a school board meeting to set out to do. It was brought to our attention, and then we said, okay, let's figure it out. How can we make this happen? Because it's a win-win for so many people.
Joshua and Sydney go to Blue.
For Frisbee, he says the situation is manageable thanks to the teacher campus, but he's well aware that colleagues around the state are struggling.
I think that impacts teacher turnover. I think that impacts towards the middle and end of the year teacher morale.
The housing development is about halfway through its 15-year, $2.5 million loan, and local leaders hope that their efforts will make Buncombe County a better place to live, not just for teachers, but their students as well. For ncIMPACT, I'm Evan Howell.
Thank you, Evan. Let's bring back our experts. And now joining us for our ncIMPACT Roundtable is Kevin Bastian. Kevin's a Senior Research Associate at UNC Chapel Hill and the Director of the Education Policy Initiative. Kevin, let's start with you. You've done a lot of research into this area. What have you found around these shortages? What should people at home know?
Thanks, Anita. Yeah, since really the beginning of COVID, myself and colleagues of EPIC have been diving into and looking at attrition for teachers because they're so important to the recovery for students in this state. And we've really found that prior to COVID, teacher attrition was flat. Around 11 to 11.5% of teachers in a given September, at the start of a school year, would leave and not be teachers in the state by the following September. During the initial months of the pandemic, teacher attrition actually modestly decreased. So went down to a little bit less than 10%. But since fall 2020, teacher attrition has really been on the rise. So between September 2020 and September 2021, teacher attrition increased to about 12%. And in the most recent period we were able to look at with data, from September 2021 to September 2022, teacher attrition is now at 15.6%. And this is both due to teachers leaving during the school year and teachers also leaving between school years.
So let me dig into this data a little bit more with you. Where are we seeing the most acute shortages?
We are sort of seeing shortages, I think, across the board, but there's still shortages in certain traditional high-need subject areas, and that might be STEM or special education. I also think it's worth noting the variation in teacher attrition rates, by which I mean there are districts in the state where their attrition in the most recent period is still less than 10%. So they're losing relatively few teachers. And there are districts in the state where their attrition in the most recent period is above 30%. They're losing, a third of their workforce. So there's real differences there. And And so in the northeast part of the state, for instance, teacher attrition is quite high. And in the western counties of the state, it's on average much lower.
Thank you for that. So Bennett, I want to pick up with you. Obviously, we've got to keep the pipeline going, and thank you for sharing the great information about the Teachers Fellows Program. Yet many schools of education are at a place where they're at 50% enrollment. What is driving that issue?
So I think there's a couple of factors, but I think one, that's a trend that we've seen nationwide and across the state over a period of years is fewer and fewer students seeking a profession in education. I think it may tap into things where there's competitive wages or other factors that may be tying in as to why maybe students are not interested in becoming teachers. I think it's important for us, and specifically in our program, to try to recruit students at an early age and exposing them to the wonderful aspects of a career in education. And so that begins to me at middle school and in the high school. Before I became director, I was a 25-year teacher, and the last 10 years I've been a high school administrator. And I think there's things that we could do at the high school level to promote the educational field, whether it's teaching through career and technical education courses, utilizing our early colleges for teacher cadet programs and grow your own programs. So I think there's things that we can do in working with the EPPs and the community colleges and the P12 school districts to where we could promote the career much earlier as a viable opportunity for students to pursue.
I love it. So Marianne, pick up where Bennett left off. We've seen stories, Edgecombe County, what they're doing to grow their own. What else are you seeing across the state?
So I think as Bennett was talking, it just reminded me that there is a teacher tax. And if you go into education in North Carolina compared to others with similar education levels and credentials, you'll make 24.5% less. And that is greater than the national average, but it's still a trend you see nationally. And what we hear from students in high school and college is they're very keenly aware of this, and it affects their decisions. So they either are willing to make the sacrifice, or they might love to be a teacher, but they know in this state, given where we are salary-wise below the living wage, that they're not willing to do that. And so I think that teacher tax is important as we look ahead, because we do have strong revenues where we could in fact support teacher raises and help that. It's not only that, but it's a really important factor. We do see some other really exciting, I think, efforts being made, but it needs to also be matched with policy and funding changes. So we at the Public School Forum are working with partnerships across the state that have school districts, community colleges, and institutes of higher ed, and they're really working to do just what Bennett said. How do we help attract students in, support them, and help them see a pathway that is very viable to become teachers? So they are ready, it's creative, and I'm excited about what's to come. My hope is that our state policies, our state funding, our state investments will match it, because we do have the revenue. We should not be paying beginning teachers 17% lower than Alabama. That is not what North Carolina should be doing. But today, that's what we're doing. And so my hope is we can match and increase pay, increase working conditions, and then these wonderful programs and opportunities, we'll start to see students coming into them because they can fulfill their dream of becoming a teacher and live a very solid life where they can afford to be in the communities in which they want to serve.
And if I may interject,
yes, please.
And that investment in teachers right now who are in the field is crucial to a recruitment as a premier recruitment tool. They are the greatest recruitment that we can have, is by them having an impact on the students that they're teaching to inspire them to want to become a teacher. When I talk to a staff at my old school and I ask them why they became a teacher, the number one answer across the board was that they were inspired by somebody who was a teacher. And whether it was an elementary or a middle school or a high school or even a professor in college, that person sparked a flame for them to want to give back and be an educator. So an investment in our current teachers and the efforts that we do to improve teacher working conditions and other aspects of our current teachers will pay dividends in the long run in our recruitment efforts.
I like that. Kevin, we've explored a few solutions, but this isn't just a North Carolina challenge. Other states, even states that are paying teachers more, are still struggling. Help us think through what are some of the practices that school districts may be able to implement to help with teacher attrition.
Yeah, I think it's important to think and and Bennett and Marianne both spoke to this, about this as a pipeline, and you have to focus early and while educators are also in the workforce. I think of places where, like the state of Texas, for instance, is investing strongly in paid year-long teacher residencies or student teaching experiences. That's akin to the Teaching Fellows program in a way too. It makes the financial barriers to higher education and becoming a teacher less. And through a year-long student teaching experience, that means there's good opportunities for higher quality teacher preparation. And that, of course, should really matter as those folks enter the workforce and they're better prepared. I think that's a big way that other states are doing. North Carolina could be thinking about that as well. And I would just draw attention to things that maybe in a way North Carolina is already thinking about, right? And that is programs like advanced teacher roles, where there's opportunities for greater pay for teachers, greater opportunities for leadership in classrooms. There are definitely solutions here and in other places to help address this.
Well, thank you for ending us on a positive note of optimism, for sure. I am grateful to each of you for joining and for the important work you are each doing in this state. And I want to say thank you to those local leaders featured in this episode who are giving it their all and generously allowed us to share their stories.
ncIMPACT is a PBS North Carolina production in association with the University of North Carolina School of Government. Funding for ncIMPACT is made possible by
changing the course of people's lives. That's the impact UNC Health and the UNC School of Medicine work to deliver every day. Our 40,000 team members across the state of North Carolina are committed to caring for you, our patients and communities, as well as educating the next generation of healthcare professionals. Individually, we can do a little, but collectively, we can do a lot to create impact.